Hello, welcome back. I'm Miniature Mike, and for this video we're going to do part 1 of Luke Skywalker. A while back I had someone request it. I did Darth Vader. I figured it'd be time to do Luke Skywalker, and I broke them into 2 parts because there's like 17 different Luke Skywalkers. And there's a big variety, like some are terrible, some are pretty sweet, and some shoot, some don't. So we'll jump into it. Just want to give you a quick heads up. I have a 3D printer running right now, so if there's some like background noise, you'll probably hear it. But it shouldn't be, it really shouldn't like stand out or be too bad. So just want to let you know if you guys pick that up. And then also I made some changes to the format that I think you guys are going to really like, and I'm excited for you to see them and check them out. So let's jump into the first one. We got Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight. He's 27, 90, 18, 10, and 20. Double attack, melee attack, so nothing remarkable, just pretty generic stuff. Force 3, Force Leap, and Sweep. So overall, not that exciting, especially when you compare him to some of the newer ones. So overall, I don't think he's very good. Hit points are actually pretty good compared to like a 27 melee. At that level, you might be seeing like 80 or something like that. So they're solid, but his survivability in all cases is terrible. His damage, his attack is decent. His max damage is good. It's just good. Special abilities are poor. Force powers are bad. I don't think these are just very useful, honestly. So I think his synergy and versatility also both pretty bad. But as a Luke score, he's poor. He's a poor Luke. I don't think he's the worst, but he's not that good. So, and Blue Milk would agree. Actually, Blue Milk is much more harsh than I am. They gave him a 3.8, which is one of the worst scores you can get on Blue Milk. Even though Blue Milk was 1 out of 10, all the scores are distributed from about 3.5 to 9.2. So if you look at that distribution, this is the equivalent of just like dropping a 1 on him and just saying he's terrible. So overall, he's a generic duelist. Very easy to find on eBay. And my summary on him is he's just super underpowered now. And he's okay, like his okay base stats are interesting, but he just has nothing else going for him. And literally he got remade by Luke Skywalker Jedi way later. I think in the next video, you'll see Luke Skywalker Jedi. They have like almost the same sculpt. The cards look similar. I think they even have the same stats, same cost. It's just that guy's much more upgraded. Yeah, like I said, same cost, but he has much better powers, more interesting abilities, and he was essentially like a redo, kind of in the sense how a lot of other characters, they'll get a respin essentially of how bad they are. But overall, this guy, I kind of like his sculpt though. I think if you're playing without some of the new sets, you're playing with more old sets. I think he's okay. But that's if you're only playing with like Rebel Storm, but nobody does that. Actually could be fun to do that sometime. Just like restrict the sets you can use. Next, Luke. This is the worst character ever in my opinion. So he's a 17, 40, 17, 7, and 20. So for a 17, those are actually pretty good stats for a shooter. But he just has impulsive shot, and then he just has force 2 force. So when you look at his hit points, 40 hit points on a 17, that's pretty fair. His range survivability, his melee, like his survivability again terrible. He has nothing helping him out really. I just said bad for range because he does have some okay defense to help him out, but if a melee person jumps on him, which they will, he's dead. His attack is actually pretty good. It's a good attack. His max damage is fair. So most people at 17, they're usually doing 1 shot maybe. They might have cunning and they may have something to give him 30 damage. He just has 20, so it's just fair. Special abilities are bad. I should have said awful because this doesn't really count as a special ability, but oops. Force powers, okay. I looped, since he just has 2 force, I looped force powers into special abilities because I didn't think it would be fair to just drop a 1 on him. So I had impulsive shot by itself is terrible, but when you have 2 force in there to just kind of, get an extra reroll, I think that elevates it just a hair. And overall, yeah, he's just awful. His synergy's awful. His versatility's awful. As a Luke score, he's awful. On Blue Milk, it's a 3.99, so he's actually on Blue Milk better than the last Luke, which I think is way backwards, super backwards. I think the other Luke is like, he's bad, but he's like okay-ish. This guy, he has no use. He's really more there just for like a, if you're doing some sort of like scenario role-playing thing, but otherwise in a normal game, he's terrible. And as a result, on eBay, you can pick him up easy. He's only like $2 on eBay. One of the easiest rare characters you'll ever find on eBay. So summary, there's really nothing good about him. And really just his impulsive shot, his whole design is kind of around, like I just said, kind of maybe scenario building or whatever. Not very good, but you know, if you want to collect, you know, he's part of the collection, so you got to pick him up at some point, and he's very easy to do that. Let's move on to the next one. So we got Luke Skywalker on Tauntaun from Universe. He's 16, 60, 17, 8, and 10 attack. 10 damage, I should say, and he's got lightsaber 10, speed 8, so he's kind of quick, force powers, and he has use the force. So that looks like a cool power, but because he does 10 damage, and from how I've always understood and played what the errata says, when you do critical hits, you double the base damage, not, you know, everything added on. So really, you're just doubling 10, and that's not great. That's pretty bad. So overall, I think he's a fair piece. He's really cheap and gives you some great stats. So he's very cheap. His hit points are great for a 16. His survivability, I think, for range is pretty fair, just because he's got that speed. He can shoot a little bit, but it's not good shooting. But he does have the speed, and he has solid defense and hit points for his cost bracket. So I think that's fair. But his melee survivability is poor. Like, he does have some speed, so he can kind of move away if he needs to, but he's not going to contribute much there. I think his attack is really good. Having 8 attack on a 16, pretty nice. Max damage is poor. His special abilities are fair. You know, having speed 8 is nice, and lightsaber is okay. So if someone comes close to him, he can do a little bit more, but it's not great. The cool thing is that, you know, if you find ways to give him, like, you know, multiple attacks or other abilities with commander effects, I think you could pretty easily make him a lot better. So there's something to consider. But overall, his force powers, they're bad. Like, use the force on this character, it's wasted. Ability synergy, not really there. Versatility, I think, is fair, just because he can do a little bit of melee with the extra attack, the extra damage. He can be a little quick, and I think you could probably upgrade him quite a bit with some interesting commander effects. You know, I mean, the obvious thing is just give Recan to all of these guys, and they're better. So, like, yeah, you could give him mobile and evade, and he's awesome. But I don't really want to just, like, say go there too much. But I think if you're more clever than that, you could probably do some cool things with him. As a Luke, I think he's fair. Like, I don't love the use the Force, but I do like how cheap he is and in the nice stats he's got going on there. And Blue Milk would agree. He's pretty just kind of a below average character. He's a semi-mobile shooter, very cheap on eBay as well. And in summary, he's also not that great, but I like the mobility. Use the Force is wasted on him, and he definitely requires some commander effects to make more practical. And he's a large base, so you got to keep in mind about his size, but large bases aren't too bad. So Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master. So okay, here's the first, you know, good Luke Skywalker from Universe, and he's part of the first set of New Republic characters they released, and I think he's okay. He's good. He's absolutely passed up by other people, absolutely. But like on his own, like, he's a good character. He's a good piece, but you probably wouldn't find him on any New Republic squads today. So if you're maybe limiting it and saying, hey, let's use some of the more medium or old squads or old characters, he's okay. The problem with him, though, is if you take a look at what he has, his stats, and you see that he's a 74, one of the issues that I have is that you look at Darth Vader Jedi Hunter, who's a 75, and Darth Vader Jedi Hunter, he's a great piece. He's really good. He's much better than him. And so overall, hold on one second. I had to do a quick pause there, but I edited it out. So just continuing on him. So he's got 130, 22, 16, and 20. Great stats. Just has triple and melee, but his force powers, he's got so many galore. Force 2, he has leap, renewal, block and deflect, sweep, throw, and speed. And his commander effect is just giving 1 extra force to basically all your force users, which is, it's okay. It's good. You know, it's solid. I think it's a pretty good one. So overall, I think he's a really good piece, but like I mentioned, I think he gets passed up for the most part by a lot of other characters, and even some characters in his own range. So I don't want to say he's bad or like below average necessarily, but he's just fine. So taking a look, his hit points are fair for 74, a little low, but there's other people with hit points like that. His range survivability, I think, is great. I think it's pretty solid because he has the high defense, he can do deflect, and he has master speed, so he can use his speed to maybe jump on those range characters pretty quickly or to stay out of sight. In terms of melee survivability, maybe not quite as good there because melee pieces that defense isn't as helpful anymore, but he does have block, so it's good. I think having 16 attack is always great. His max damage is good. You know, when you're having it 74, Just having triple attack and nothing else is pretty average, but it's good. His special abilities are good. I think his force powers are really good, but not great. He has a really interesting, just kind of array of utilitarian powers. Nothing awesome, but a lot of options. I think his ability synergy is poor, because I feel like not a lot of his powers maybe synergize well together, but he has a toolbox with a lot of different tools in it to do different things. As a result, I think his versatility is great. It's not amazing, but it's solid. His Luke score, I'm going to say he's really good, just a 3 point. So that's equivalent, giving like a 3.5 out of 10, or 3.5 out of 5. So he's solid. Blue Milk is like, yeah, he's okay. Blue Milk would kind of agree with me. And I would consider him a versatile duelist. And on eBay, he's like $22. So kind of in summary, I think he's solid. He's still pretty good, not great, but like I said, he's been surpassed. You know, Luke Skywalker Grandmaster is better than him in every way, and is basically the upgrade. His force power combinations are kind of very all over the place, utilitarian. Nothing very powerful, but useful. And then his commander effect, it's fine, you know, if you mix him with a lot of Jedi that could use an extra force point, you know, that's great, more the merrier, but overall it's, you know, that's kind of what you'd use him for. So anyway, he's alright, not too crazy, but yeah. Moving on to Champions of the Force, Luke Skywalker Young Jedi. So he's 21, pretty cheap. 80, 18, 9, and 20. We got a unique melee attack, double attack, Force 3, and I like his powers. He's got Alter, Jedi Mind Trick, he's got Lightsaber Deflect. So very useful and interesting powers. Kind of reminds me of like the Jedi Consular, sort of. But pretty solid. Taking a look at him, overall I think he's a fair piece. He's not bad, not great. He has his uses. I do like how cheap he is. His stats, though, for 21 are actually pretty good. So for a 21-point melee character, just overall looking at all the characters, he's good, really good hit points, really good range survivability because he has deflect, which can help, and he's got solid stats to boot for his cost rating. His melee survivability is good. I like that he can use Alter and Trick to help in those situations. Attack is good. His damage is good. Because I guess the thing I like about him is he's pretty cheap for what you get. Special abilities, though, poor. As his force powers are good. He's pretty fair when it comes to just the versatility and synergy. But in general, as a Luke, I give him a fair rating. He's solid. He's okay. Blue Milk is a little more critical of him, though. They gave him a 5.6, and I can understand why. In some cases, he's kind of unremarkable, but he's just kind of like a situation-altering duelist where you want to use your mind trick, your alter, and you want to support other people. So in summary, I think he's unpopular on Blue Milk, but I think he's a little bit better than Blue Milk gives him credit for. His stats are quite solid for 21, and though limited, his force points, can be a nice short-term support. So I like that you maybe mix him with somebody else. Jedi Mind Trick could be helpful to maybe if you pair him with a better Jedi or better piece, that could be useful. And yeah, like I said before, I think he's meant to be like a supporting cast member, especially with these kinds of powers. So I think he's all right, not bad, not good, just fair. Luke Skywalker of Dagobah. I don't like this guy very much at all. I think he's pretty bad. However, my overall score for him ended up being fair. But let's take a look first. He's a 28, so kind of expensive. He's 60, 17, 9, and 20. Those aren't very good stats on a 28-point shooter, in my opinion. He's got double attack. His force powers is barrage and sweep. So I like that he has barrage with 20 damage, but it's limited. He can use it a couple times. Sweep is a little silly because he has barrage and sweep. That doesn't really make much sense because they're kind of doing the same thing because he's a shooter, but whatever. So all in all, his hit points are poor. I'd expect more on a shooter that's at this level. His range survivability is bad. His melee survivability is bad. His attack is pretty good. For 28, having 9 attack for a shooter is solid. I think his max damage potential is pretty awesome because he has double, but then if you get him in situations where he can just use his blaster barrage, you could get 4 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets, 2 targets, whatever. And that's pretty underrated. It's pretty solid, so I do like that. Special abilities are poor, though. His force powers are fair. His ability synergy is bad because none of these powers synergize with each other. His versatility is fair though. You know, Blaster Barrage can be nice in that situation, and he has double attack, which helps a little bit. For a Luke score, I gave him just a solid 3. Oh, I think that might be that's a typo. I didn't mean to give him that high of a Luke score. I would have given him probably like a poor rating. I just don't like him very much, so that's a on me. I got that one wrong. So overall Luke score, I don't think he's that good. Blue Milk, also not that good. And then he's just kind of a Blaster Barrager, pretty cheap to pick up. And in summary, so I'm not a big fan. He feels really overcosted. Like, I think if this guy costed like 24 or just maybe around or a little less, I think it could be a little bit more fun, a little more interesting, but he's too expensive for what he does. If you have the setup right, Blaster Barrage can be nice, but it's a little too expensive. And the cool thing about him is it's very easy for people to just assume he's a melee person, but he is a shooter. That's something I've always kind of glossed over. It's like a Mandela effect. I'm like, oh, he's got melee attack. But no, he doesn't have it, which is pretty good, so very solid. But yeah, let's move on to one of the Lukes that's truly pretty awesome. So we got Alliance and Empire, Luke Skywalker, Champion of the Force. He's a 49, so pretty, kind of pricey. One of the more expensive Lukes, actually the most expensive Luke we've talked about so far. He has 110, 20, 13, and 20. Unique, melee, double, and flurry. That'll come into play later. Force powers, he's got a sweet stack of force powers. He's got alter and leap, like Luke's tend to have. He's got Jedi Mind Trick, again, like Luke's tend to have. But he has Night Speed, he has deflect, and he has Use the Force. So Use the Force on him, much, much, much better, because he has flurry. So you can trigger, at will, you could trigger a flurry attack, which is very powerful, in my opinion. Really, really nice kind of combination he has going on here. So overall, I think he's a great character. He's great. His hit points, though, for how much you're paying, is maybe a little below average. It's fair. His range survivability is great, especially with having deflect, having renewal, having night speed, being able to kind of hop on people. So I think he's a melee piece that can do well against those range pieces. His melee survivability is good. He's nothing like outright going to help him out, and the hit points isn't going to help him either, or the defense. But Jedi Mind Trick can be nice, Alter can be nice, and then maybe Leap to get out of, avoid a attack of opportunities, maybe to run away or to maybe go somewhere else. So, and then he can, do some pretty solid damage himself if he needs to. So I think it's good, but maybe nothing. Those are things that are kind of more auxiliary to help out. His max damage, I think, is great. I'm including a little bit of Use the Force, because by itself, he just has double attack, and that's not too remarkable. And then Flurry attack is great, but it's, it's kind of a cherry on top power, something you won't see too often. But I did bump him up a little bit because, when you do get to use the Force, that's a lot of damage. So his Force powers, I think, are awesome. I think his ability synergy is awesome, and then I think his versatility is exceptional, because, his Force powers have so many different wide range of things you can do with them, and he has good stats to boot. I think he's just an extremely versatile Luke, can do all sorts of cool things, and as a result I gave him an awesome. I think he's awesome for just kind of Lukes in general. Blue Milk is also kind of on the same page. And then when it comes to specialties, I just, like I mentioned before, I think he's an extremely versatile duelist. He can do so many different things you want him to do, which I really like. Really, really like that a lot. And he's not too bad on eBay as well. So overall, in summary, I think he's really truly the first really powerful Luke in the game. I think Flurry and Use the Force, this is a great use of Use the Force, whereas on Tauntaun it was wasted, but here, I think it's an excellent combo. Very, very awesome. He has an amazing array of powers. He kind of reminds me of Luke Skywalker Jedi Master, where he has just kind of like a bunch of powers that are like kind of interesting in different circumstances. But like I really like these ones even more because he's much cheaper. They're all very useful powers. I like that he has. And the thing I really like about this guy is if you mix him, I like to mix him with like like Obi-Wan Unleashed or something like that, because then Obi-Wan Unleashed can go do his damage, and then he can give him a ton of Force, and he can give him Master of the Force too, and that's a combination I really like. I like giving him Master of the Force too, when possible, because then he can use all of these powers and he can be so much more wild and deadly. So, a combo that I like. And in my opinion, I think he's one of the best melee Lukes in the game, definitely. Very, very solid. Like I mentioned, super versatile, really fun. When I've used in the past, sometimes that 110 hit points can bite you if you are not, tactically doing the right thing. But overall, I've had a lot of fun with him. He's cool. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on him. Let's move on to the next one. Let's see, what do we got? We got Luke Skywalker of Yavin. So this guy is really interesting for one reason, and I'll get to it in a second. So he's a 35, 60, 16, 8, and 20. So feels a lot like, Mr. Blaster Barrage Luke just a few ago. he's kind of that, but improved. So special abilities, he's got Pilot. He's got Deadly Attack, Double, Flurry, and Twin. So he has everything going into that critical hit. And then Force Powers, he's got Force 3 and Lightsaber Deflect, just for some added defense at range, which is helpful. He needs it. He's kind of vulnerable. But overall, I like a few things about him. So overall, I think he's good. He's got his strengths and his weaknesses. His hit points are fair. His range survivability is fair because he does have deflect that helps a little bit. He's awful at melee. His attack is fair. His max damage, though, is out of the world. It's exceptional. Some of the reasons for it is when you have a combination of this where you have 4 attacks, you have Deadly Attack, and when you play the probability game, that's basically 4 attacks, and your chance of a critical is 10%. When you do the math together and you say, hey, what's my chance of getting at least 1 attack, at least 1 critical hit in my salvo, that actually comes out to about 35%, which is the best of pretty much any character in the entire game. There's a couple other characters that are close, but this one's fantastic. I think in my earlier video a while back, I think there was Darth Maul, Sith Apprentice. He's actually pretty good too. He gets 3 attacks and he's a 15% chance for critical hit. So this guy, you just do full salvos and there's a good chance you hit a critical. And then once you do, you get a 5th attack. And given, I'm not getting into the statistics of it, but it's pretty crazy. That's kind of like an amazing strength that he has going for him. His special abilities, I think, are great. His force powers are fair. Very useful for him to have deflect because he needs it. His synergy is awesome. Like these all move together fantastic. So he's got great synergy. Versatility, not quite as good. I mean, yeah, he can shoot a lot of people, but really he just kind of has one thing that he's meant to do. I think he's a really good piece. Got his pros and his weaknesses. He's just kind of like a glass cannon, like I mentioned. The stats feel a little fragile. He doesn't have much defense except for deflect, especially when people get close to him. His defense is his offense, really. But he's pretty cool. So I think if you can find ways to maybe help his defense out a little bit or protect him, he can just dish that damage out, and it's pretty fun. So overall, like I mentioned, he has an awesome chance of hitting critical hits with his increased probability and then the increased opportunities. And then I think he feels pretty fragile. Deflect can help a little. And like I said, if you build your squad around him to maximize all these attacks he gets, if you can find a way to give him extra attack. I don't know if there is anyone in Rebels that explicitly does that, but still, it's pretty cool. It's a cool mechanic, but yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of him. I haven't really used him much in games though at all, but in theory, I kind of like the possibility, but pros and cons. So the last one I think we're taking a look at today is Luke's Landspeeder, which was kind of near and dear to me. Got him a long time ago, back in like 2007 when this guy came out, and used him for years and years in games. Like I mentioned, I hadn't played minis for a decade plus. Got back into it somewhat recently, and I've always had an incredible time with this character. He's just so fun. So he's a 47, 140, 18, 12, and 20. For a shooter at 47, those stats are through the roof. Incredible stats. He is a large base, so keep that in mind. He's unique for both characters, Obi-Wan and Luke. He's got mobile, speed 10, and twin. Unfortunately, you'd think he has flight, but he doesn't. Not as far as I know. I don't think there's any errata or FAQ that kind of corrects that. So something to keep in mind, doesn't have flight, but he is fast, and he has twin and mobile, and he has great attack, so he's going to be hitting his targets. And then for force powers, he's got 6 force, and he has the usual Luke Skywalker stuff, alter, mind trick, deflect, which I think are more interesting and helpful. If, say, a character would get too close to him, um, then he can kind of be like, hey, like, don't mess with me type of stuff. But in general, that speed's going to be great. So I think he's an awesome character, a super nice hit and run character. His hit points are exceptional. 140 hit points on a shooter at that cost level is kind of crazy. So I think that's underrated. I think he's an exceptional when it comes to range survivability, having deflect and the speed and the mobile. Very awesome. His melee survivability is pretty awesome as well. Alter and Mind Trick will help in that regard. He's pretty quick. He doesn't have flight though, so if people are able to get on top of him, the 18 defense won't help out as much. But still, it's awesome. He's still going to be fine in melee situations. You just keep hitting running if you can. His attack is great. His max damage though, a little loathsome. Just 40. That's it. No more. Which is okay. Sometimes you gotta have your compromises. His special abilities are awesome. His force powers, they're great. I think they're great. Like he gets 6 hits, he gets all the force he needs, and they're very useful for what he needs them for. So I think they're solid. Maybe it should be more really good instead of great, but it's fine. His abilities synergize awesome together. He's crazy versatile. Just because he's got that mobility, he's got the speed, and he can do a lot of nice things in close quarters as well. As a Luke, I think he's awesome. Blue Milk gives him an 8.04, so Blue Milk underrates him a little bit to what I think about him. So maybe there's something I don't know, but I really like this character, and he's an awesome hit and run piece. He's actually the most expensive Luke, believe it or not. He's $35. No other Luke in the game is more expensive than him. So Luke, like Vader, are very cheap pieces. So very easy to collect and pick up. So in summary, I think he's awesome hit and run. His very high stats for a mobile shooter, along with his great force powers, are pretty sweet. He can, be really tough to track down by melee characters as well. So you'll see in my later video. But you have Luke's Snowspeeder. It's similar but different in some ways. But they're just such nice hit and run pieces. Like they can just move in close, get away, just run around. They are a pain to track down. But I've always had a fantastic time using this piece, and I highly, highly recommend him. So I think he's awesome. I think with that, we're gonna go into the summary. So I did some updates on the summary. In one of my last videos, you probably already saw it, but I've changed the color scheme to go from blue to orange. It's like I mentioned, I do a lot of charts at work, and so it's very important to try to be colorblind friendly. And I like this color gradient too, so I think going blue to orange, much easier to see, much easier to spot, besides green and red. So I like this more. And then I also included a key, so you can see how I ranked them before. So the key, you can see 1, awful, bad, poor, fair, good, really good, great, awesome, exceptional. I think it's a pretty solid key, pretty good rating system from 1 to 5. And you can see how they all match up. So if you want to see, hey, attack on Luke Skywalker Jedi Master is a 4, what does that mean? It means it's great. And then it's also heat mapped as well, so you can get a sense of, just by visually looking at it, what's good, what's average, what's bad. So I think that's going to come into play and be helpful too. And then I included on my summary sheet, you have the approximate eBay cost, so that if you want to just kind of look at all the Lukes, see what's good, what's bad, kind of where they all kind of fall, you can get a sense of, value versus, value in the game, value monetarily, if it's someone you really want to go pick up and collect and add to your squad. So I think, I think it's a good way to do it. So, I really hope you liked doing that way. I'd like to hear comments if you like it. I also liked doing in the actual going through each character, instead of doing numbers. I didn't think that was as helpful. I thought that was maybe more confusing. It was harder to relate to. So I think having a key that translates numbers to what the actual rate, like what I feel about it is super important. And that way, when you go and you look at Luke's Landspeeder, you can see, oh yeah, great force powers, great synergy, so forth, instead of just seeing a number. So I think this will be a lot better for the audience, a lot better for you guys, and I'm excited to continue this format moving forward. So just to summarize, Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight, a generic duelist, not good really at all, but he's got okay hit points. Luke Skywalker Rebel, overall, he's good at nothing, so I'd skip. Luke Skywalker on Tauntaun, he's got some nice stats for being kind of like a semi-mobile shooter. He needs some help, kind of underwhelming in a lot of situations, but he's kind of fun. We got Luke Skywalker Jedi Master, who's pretty solid. I think he's a really good character overall. Not amazing, but pretty good. And he's a very just kind of rounded character. He has lots of attacks, he has solid stats, and then he has force powers that can just kind of do all sorts of stuff. So overall, a solid piece, pretty good. And then you have Luke Skywalker Young Jedi, who I think is a little underrated. He's a very cheap Luke. In terms of melee Lukes, he's the cheapest one in the game. And he's just kind of solid stats. He has actually pretty good stats for a 21, how cheap he is. And his force powers are like, they're nice support force powers. So overall, Blue Milk doesn't like him. I like him a little bit more than Blue Milk does, but he's solid. Luke Skywalker of Dagobah, really he's just kind of all about finding ways to maximize his blaster barrage. That's kind of where his key is. I don't like him that much. I think he's really overcosted, so I'd stay away from him. Luke Skywalker, Champion of the Force, awesome. Super versatile duelist, pretty much great in all regards. His base stats are a little underwhelming, just a little bit, but he's got awesome force powers, great combos, great synergy. I think he's fantastic, so I think he's an awesome Luke and a great character. Luke Skywalker, Hero of Yavin, has his pros and cons. Very fragile, but if you can get him in situations where he can use his combinations of, deadly, flurry, all of his attacks, then he has got a great chance of hitting criticals. Probably he's the best chance of hitting critical hits of anyone in the game in just kind of one salvo. So pretty fun. He's a fun character, and be fun to sometimes do some kind of sort of theory crafting, figuring out a good squad to put him with. Minus Recan. I don't like building squads by putting Recan in them because I think it ruins the fun of trying to be clever. But obviously it's something you could do that help him out. And then finally, Luke's Landspeeder. Awesome, fantastic piece. He's a great hit and run shooter, amazing stats, very useful, all around in what he does. As you can see, Blue Milk's not quite as high on him as maybe I am, or not as high on him as Luke Skywalker, Champion of the Force. These guys are definitely different in their own ways. In some cases, I kind of think Luke's Landspeeder is better, but he does have that large base you have to be aware of. But awesome, another fantastic piece. He's the most difficult one, as you can see, he's about $35 on eBay. But in general, if you want to collect any of these Lukes, it's super easy to do. So no problem there. Anyways, I'll leave it with that. If you've made it to this far in the video, I'll leave timestamps as well so that you guys can maybe jump to characters you want to see. And hopefully you enjoyed this format update. I definitely have. I really like it. And like always, please like, please subscribe, and definitely please comment. I really appreciate your guys' input, your thoughts, ideas, what your takes are on these characters, maybe interesting combinations or interesting squads you put them with, just anything. Just kind of hit me up in the comments. Love to hear what your thoughts are. And I'll leave it at that. So until next time, I will see you later.